Hello everybody, this is Jyoti here. Welcome to Jopat Tech Guru. In today's session, I'm going to discuss regarding the code first approach, which is a part of entity framework tutorial. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe and click on the bell icon to get the notifications of my new videos. Let us start the discussion. So the entity framework provides three approaches to create an entity model, and each one has their own pros and cons. Code first, database first, as well as model first approaches. So what is this code first approach? Code first modeling workflow targets a database that doesn't exist, and code first will create it. It can also be used if you have an empty database and then code first will add new tables to it. So either you can generate the database and tables, or if you are having an empty database, it can create the tables accordingly. Code first allows you to define your model using C# or VB.NET classes. Additional configuration can optionally be performed using attributes on your classes and properties, or by using the Fluent API. Why code first approach is introduced? Code first is really made up of set of puzzle pieces. First are your domain classes. The domain classes have nothing to do with entity framework. They are just the items of your business domain. Entity framework then has a context that manages the interaction between those classes and your databases. So once we are going to add the reference of entity framework through the manage NuGet packages, we are going to see all the magic happens. The context is not specific to code first. It is an entity framework feature. Code first adds a model builder that inspects your classes that the context is managing, and then uses a set of rules or conventions to determine how those classes and the relationships describe a model and how that model should map to your database. All of this happens at runtime. So during the execution time, it is going to generate the database. As we are highlighting in this series, a code first approach, we are going to create the domain classes, and using the entity framework, we are generating the database as well as tables. Code first also has the ability to use that model to create a database if you wanted to. It can also update the database if the model changes using a feature called as code first migrations. Let us implement the code first approach. For this, currently, I'm opening SQL Server. You can observe here, I'm connected with the databases. So there are so many databases. Presently, through the application, I'm going to create the database and add the tables. Let me create a new project, console application. Simple code first approach. Create. Okay. So here, this is a console application in which we are getting app.config and program.cs. So now let me create a class by right clicking and adding a new item, and we are going to create a class. So currently I'm creating a class called as employee class, in which I'm going to add the properties connected with the employee class. Let me add a default constructor. Currently I'm not writing anything inside this. Now we have got certain public properties. So let me add some employee ID, employee name, and employee address. Okay. So once I'm going to add all these properties, if I'm creating the object of this employee class, I can always access them and set the values inside that. Next step is we have to go for adding the reference of the NuGet packages. For this, right click on the references, click on manage NuGet packages. In the browse section, search for entity. It is going to list out all the entity framework options over here. Choose this entity framework. You can observe here, currently it is showing me 6.4.4 version. With respect to your application, it is going to install this entity framework. So you can see the entire description about the entity framework package, which you are going to add it with respect to your project. So version, author, license, date published, like this, all the informations are there. So click on install. In the first dialog, it is going to show you the installation with respect to your application. Then in the second, here it is going to show us a license acceptance. Accept it. It will take few seconds to install this entity framework. Okay. We will be getting uninstall here. Fine. Close it. Come back to the Solution Explorer. In the references, you can see that there will be two set of informations. One is entity framework as well as entity framework SQL Server. These two packages references are getting added. Okay. So the next step is we have to create one context class. The context class should have the references. But before that, we have to make sure our table is having a key over here. So key is very important. You have to create the table with primary key. So currently I want to put the employee ID as the primary key and I'm getting an error. So because we have to include system.component model.data annotations. So either you can type it and you can click it here. Automatically the reference is getting added. So employee ID is now the primary key. So after this, we are going to create our own class, which is referring to DB context class. So right click and add one more new class. I'm giving the name as my context. And here, some things we have to note it down. First is we have to add system.data.entity. Second is we have to refer within through this DB context. So DB context is one of the class which is usually used to get all the implementation done through the entity framework. So whatever the things you are going to try it or whatever the things you are trying it with respect to your context classes, everything you can refer it here. Once you move the cursor, it is showing you the entire description. You can just read it for more information. Now within this, I'm adding one public, my context. This is a default constructor I'm adding. And one more important thing is we have to create a DB set type. This is having the employee reference. So what type of name you would like to suggest for your tables? It is going to suggest in the list. So I'm choosing employees and within that again get set. So my context, one more thing is important. Here we have to use the base. If I'm simply using the base opening and closing bracket, then it is going to refer to the default constructor which is present inside the DB context. But I want to create my tables within certain connections. So for that, I require app.config help. So within this app.config, I'm going to add the connection strings. Add the name. So my DB connection. And here the connection string name, connection string is equal to your SQL server name. Let me connect to the database engine and copy my server name. Ultimately, I want to generate my database tables inside this particular SQL server. So that's why I'm giving the references over here. So this is my server or data source. So data sources, this laptop, initial catalog, whatever name you want to give, you can give it. Currently, I'm giving company DB. This is the database name and integrated security is equal to true. Through the Windows implementation, I'm doing it, and provider name equal to system dot data dot SQL client. So after specifying all these information, you have to come back to the same my context class wherein you have written the base. So here you have to refer the name of the connection. The name of the connection. One more thing, we are going to add it inside the constructor. This is database dot set initializers. So what is the use of the set initializers? We can plan our database using this set initialization option. This means all the time we don't want to create a new database. So based on our requirements, we can plan this. So currently I'm referring to my context here in this new. You can observe here, once I'm creating the instance, I'm getting different options here. Create database if not exist, drop create database always, drop create database model if model changes. Any of these options you can choose it. Currently, I'm choosing create database if not exist. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah, this is again I have to give the my context name, and then I have to close it. Okay, so database dot set initialization of my context, new create a database if not exist of my context. So using this, it is going to create the database during runtime. So now after all these things, we have to make sure that we are going to call all these things inside the program.cs. So let us come back to the program.cs. Here I'm creating the object of my context class, context equal to new my context, employee emp equal to new employee. Now employee ID and whatever the informations you want to give it for the particular records, you can give it over here. Currently I'm setting employee ID, employee name, and employee address. Employee ID, employee name is Aniket, employee address is Delhi. For strings, you have to give the double quotes. For integers, you can directly give it. So now your context dot your employees table dot add of, you have to add the reference of this employee emp object. So whatever the records you have added over there, these all things are getting added in the real-time tables. So now context dot save changes. So our entire application is ready now. Let us save this, execute. It is going to generate the company DB database. So if you want, you can write something over here so that you can get the acknowledgement from the program. You can go and check the database, right click, refresh it. You will be able to see the company DB here. You can see the tables. One is migration history table and the second is employees table. If you expand the columns, you'll be able to see employee ID, name as well as address. And migration history is migration ID, context key, model as well as product version. As we are maintaining some migration related information with respect to our tables also. So this is all about your code first approach. If at all you want to see the same tabular format or tables over here, you can go to the data connections, open the laptop or open the particular connection over here by right clicking and add connection. Go to your database engine, copy the server name, paste the server name here. You will be able to see the company DB, test the connection, click on OK, click on OK. You will be able to see the tables which are generated here. So again, there are two tables, migration history as well as employees table. So hope this video has given you a clear idea regarding the code first approach. So please keep watching my videos. The next will be, I'll be showing you the model first as well as database first approaches. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day ahead.